Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheswaraha, Guru Sakshat Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Ajnana Timirandhasya, Jnananjana Shalakaya, Chakshurun Militam Yena, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Madha cha Pita Tvameva, Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva, Tvameva Vidya Dravinam Tvameva, Tvameva Sarvam Amriteshwari Ma, Tvameva Sarvam Amriteshwari Ma, Tvameva Sarvam Amriteshwari Ma. Om Amriteshwari Nama. We'll begin with a short meditation. Make sure your vertebral column, your spinal column is erect. Kindly sit straight. And slowly close your eyes. Now become aware of your breathing slowly. Just be a witness to your breathing process. And as you watch each and every inhalation and exhalation, feel the relaxation. Now feel completely relaxed. Now we'll chant Om 3 times, and as we chant Om, imagine the sound of Om to arise from your navel area and visualize the sound traveling upwards along your spinal column. Now kindly take a deep breath. Feel the vibrations of Om in each and every cell of your body. Now, once again, bringing back your awareness on your breathing. Breathing normally with full awareness. Now as you breathe in, chant the syllable, the mantra, Ma, silently along with your in-breath. After chanting Ma, hold your breath for a few seconds. Don't hold it too long. And And then when you breathe out Om. So breathe in Ma. Hold your breath. Om. And continue like this for some time. The reverberations of Ma and Om become more and more subtle. You can just feel the vibrations of Ma and Om as you breathe in and out. is a representation of divine love. And Om, divine light. Now feel your heart expanding with the divine love while breathing in. And while breathing out, imagine the light expanding your horizons. You're just being filled with that pure love and light. Now let's pray for the peace and welfare of the whole world. While praying, imagine the love and light coming from your heart, going out to all the beings in this world, and falling upon each and every person and being on this planet. And while doing so, we'll chant the Lokasamastha Prayer 9 times. Om Lokaha Samastaha Sukhino Bhavantu. 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 Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Om Dhyayamo Dhablavagundhanavatim Tejomayim Naishtikim Snigdha Pangavilokinim Bhagavatim Mandasmidashri Mukhim Valsalyamritavarshinim Sumadhuram Sankirtanalapinim Shamangim Madhusikta Suptim Amridanandatmikam Ishwarim. Om Narayanam Patmabhuvam Vasishtam Shaktim Cha Tatputram Parasharam Cha Vyasam Shugam Gaudapadam Mahandam Govinda Yogindram Adhasya Shishyam Sri Shankaracharyam Adhasya Patmapadam Cha Hastamalakam Cha Shishyam Tam Todakam Vartikaryamanyam Asmat Gurun Santadam Anatosmi. Om Amriteshwariyai Namaha. Om Amriteshwariyai Namaha. Om Amriteshwariyai Namaha. In the last session, we were looking at how Bhagiratha was giving his advice to the king Rahugana And he was talking to Rahugana about the, you can say like Tivra Vairagya, that means extreme Vairagya of this world, and how to attain that, the detachment. And of course he was saying the easiest way to attain that was through the service of holy men or Guru. And doing the seva to the Guru is the easiest path for that. So Rahugana now is asking Jadabharata that these questions now. And he says, this human birth is indeed the most glorious of all births. Of what use is embodiment in Swarga and other heavenly spheres? For one cannot have there the frequent opportunity of contact with holy men like you who have attained to the highest spiritual fulfillment through devotion to Sri Hari. So he's saying that this human birth is indeed the most glorious of all births. Why? Because it's only through the human birth that one can work for and put forth effort to achieve liberation or moksha. And in Viveka Chudamani, Lord Shankaracharya says, Durlabam Trayameva Idat Devanugraha Hetukam Manushyastvam Mumukshustvam Mahapurusha Samsrayaha. So he says, there are three things which are rare indeed and are due to the grace of God, namely a human birth and the longing for liberation and protecting care of a sage who has attained liberation. So these three things. So one is the human birth, then longing for liberation and the care or the service of a sage who has been liberated. So he says, what use is embodiment in Swarga? Swarga means in heaven and other heavenly spheres. So even if you go to heaven, what is the point? And so he's asking this question. If I go to heaven, what can I achieve? So why? What is there? In heaven, it is said that there is only pleasures, a lot of pleasures. And you can exhaust your karma, but nothing else. So he says, why shouldn't you go to heaven? Some people, of course, want to go, but he says one thing. One cannot have the frequent opportunity of contact with holy men like you, who have attained to the highest spiritual fulfillment through devotion to Sri Hari. So if you go to heaven also, you know what happens? You cannot have the contact of holy men. You know, in the story of Ganges, when Ganges was flowing, river Ganga, and Ganga Mata was flowing in heaven, King Bhagiratha invited Ganga Mata to come to earth. And she asked this question, why should I come to the earth? Because, all these people who have sinned will come and take bath in me. And they will all give me their impurities. So why should I come? So King Bhagiratha said, Well, you can stay in heaven, there is no problem. You will be pure. But one thing, if you come to the earth, holy men will take bath in you. So those holy saints, when they take bath in you, your impurities will be completely washed away. Not even a small particle of those impurities will remain if they take bath in you. And not only that, you can stay in heaven, but none of the holy men will take bath here in you. So just come to the earth. So that's how Ganga Mata, that's river Ganga, came to the earth. I remember the scene when Amma went to Ganga and took a bath in Ganga. Some of you must have seen it. She just stood there. I mean, most of us, what happened is when we went with such enthusiasm in the beginning. Oh, we are going to jump into Ganga. We are all going to get purified. And then there is no need to do any more sadhana because we will be pure. Right? So we all went with so much enthusiasm. And the moment we stepped into it, it was so freezing that immediately all of us jumped out. So that was the end of our purity. But what happened to Amma? Amma stood there for more than an hour in the water, which was ice cold. And she just stood there gazing at infinity. And first she started singing, then she stopped singing, and then she was just standing there. And later on when we asked, Amma explained what happened, because we didn't know what was happening. We couldn't see. We didn't have the divine eyes and the Divya Chakshushu, that is the divine eyesight to see what's happening. So Amma said all the great saints, yogis, everybody came to visit her. And she was giving darshan to all of them. And that's what happened. And she said, why did you take me after for about, she was standing for an hour. And we were all having so much of fear that if she stays for more than some more time, her legs might get frozen, or her hands, her whole body might get frozen. So we just carried her to the land and slowly put her inside the car. She was not even breathing. She was in complete samadhi. We were also very afraid that Amma must have left her body. And we were wondering whether she was alive or she had left her body. So it was an hour later, she became normal. When she became normal, first thing she asked is, why did you take me out of the river? Why did you take me out of Ganga? I was standing there and giving darshan. And the second thing she said is, always never touch my body when I'm in samadhi. Shouldn't have touched my body. So what happens? So that just one dip in Ganga would have fulfilled Ganga's life. That's what I mean. So such is just the touch of a holy person. So if Amma touches, or a great saint touches Ganga, and it is purified from all the sins with which all the sinners had gone and taken bath. So imagine our state. How many times Amma have touched us, right? So we should be happy for the fact that Amma has hugged us, Amma has given us darshan so many times. Anyway, this is what he says. So you stay there, you don't have to come. Then, none of the holy people are going to come and take bath in you. And Rahugana, that's what Rahugana says. Here, if we live in Even if we live in heaven or heavenly spheres, there are so many other worlds. What is the use? Because we cannot have contact with holy men like Jadabharata. So he says, it is quite easy to understand that in the mind of one who has been freed from all sinful tendencies by the contact of your feet, devotion to the Lord will be generated at once. For even if by a minute's contact with you, my tendency for argumentation, born of sheer ignorance, has departed. So even a small, a minutest fraction of time is required. And he says that's enough to be freed of all sinful tendencies. And he said, remember that he was arguing with Jadabharata earlier. And he said, my tendency to argue with you out of sheer ignorance has gone away. Now I don't want to argue. Why? His mind has become peaceful. So, same thing. When we come to Amma, isn't it? When we come to Amma, we have a list of questions. We want to ask her so many things. This thing, that thing, that thing. But when the moment we come near Amma and Amma touches us, what happens? Everything vanishes. Everything disappears. No questions. Why? Because your mind has become completely silent. There is nothing to ask. What is there to ask? When the mind, when the mind is not there, how can you ask? So what happened is here, he's saying, even my ignorance, because of my ignorance, I was arguing with you earlier, now it's gone. And salutations to the great ones, salutations to infants, salutations to the youth, salutations to brahmacharyans, salutations to the knowers of Brahman who move about in the world as avadutas. May good sense and good fortune dawn on kings like me. So he's giving prostrations to everybody. Brahmacharyans, youth, infants. Because why? They are all innocent. And they are also striving to become sadhaks, striving to gain liberation. And he says, I salute to the knowers of Brahman who move about in the world like avadutas, like you. Avadutas means, people who are who does not follow any specific rule. They look like mad people. And completely ignorant. Sometimes they walk around as if they are mad men. They might be, some other people might be laughing. Some might be crying. Or some might, even throw stones at you. So, all these people, when you see them, you might get frightened. You can get, you might not go near them, thinking that these are all, people who are mad or who are not beggars. So he says, how would you recognize such people? So he's saying they are knowers of Brahman. They know Brahman, and that's why they are acting like that. And may good sense and good fortune dawn on kings like me. And then he says, O Parikshit. Now Sri Shuka says. So remember, now Shuka is Shuka Deva, that is Lord Shuka, who's giving this to Parikshit, says, O Parikshit, thus though insulted by Rahugana at first, that great sage, out of his limitless compassion, instructed the king in the knowledge of the Supreme Being. Then worshipped by Rahugana, the sage with his mind and senses absolutely unruffled, like the unagitated surface of a calm sea, proceeded again to move about in the country. So what happened? He says, in spite of being insulted and treated like this, what did Bharata do? Jadabharata do? Jadabharata, out of his limitless compassion, instructed the king in the knowledge of the Supreme Being. And then he was worshipped by Rahugana later. But it did not move him. He also, whether he was insulted or whether he was worshipped, it was the same to him. So he just says like the unagitated surface of a calm sea. He just proceeded to move around. And Rahugana, the king of the Sauviras, having gained the knowledge of the Atman through his contact with that great sage, abandoned the ignorance-born identification of the body with the Atman. Such are the benefits that accrue from association with devotees who have taken refuge in the Lord. So you see what happened to Rahugana. So just a single meeting with Jadabharata changed his life. And he became enlightened. He achieved moksha. And Raja Parikshit said, "O paragon of devotees, what you have said before in an allegorical language about the road of samsara is intelligible only to well-instructed people. And ignorant men cannot grasp it with ease. Therefore, please elaborate the allegory on this difficult subject, showing the corresponding meaning of all the figures used." So you remember that Jadabharata was, while he was giving the teachings to Rahugana, he was talking about that about how householders are, because he says they are, when they go from one place to another place, it's like traveling in a forest. And he said that it is filled with thick clouds of dust. And he says, distressed by the ears piercing sound of crickets, frightened by the ominous hoots of owls, he goes and takes shelter, hungry and forlorn, under some poisonous trees. So he goes on describing this, isn't it? So that's what now Parikshit is asking, Lord Shuka, can you please explain what those things mean? Because he says that these are very easily understood by people who are not samsaris, means who does not belong to this world. But the people who belong to this world, it's very difficult for them. So here it's not that Parikshit did not understand, but Parikshit wanted Sri Shuka to elaborate on this. So Sri Shuka said, by the operation of the forces of Prakriti, known as Sattva, Rajas and Tamas, the jivas who mistakenly identify themselves with the body get repeated embodiments according to their karmas, which are either meritorious, demeritorious or mixed. The 6 senses of man are the prime factors for the jiva's involvement in the samsara or transmigratory cycle with its never-ending experiences of births and deaths. It is the infinitely powerful Maya, the will of the Lord, that has pushed the jiva into this path of samsara, full of perils and difficulties. For the enjoyment of the fruits of their actions, the jiva has been put on this path in the forest of samsara, which is as impure and weird as a cremation ground. But in spite of this, they persist in their travel through the forest like greedy merchants in quest of wealth. So let me stop here. So he says, by the operation of the forces of Prakriti, that is nature. So what are these forces? One is Sattva. Sattva means the pure quality. Rajas, the quality of action, and tamas, the quality of laziness, the jiva is mistakenly identifying themselves with the body. So it identifies with that particular body and then get repeated embodiments according to their karmas, whether they are good or bad or mixed. And then the 6 senses of man are the prime factors for the jiva's involvement in the samsara or the world or the transmigratory cycle. 6 senses, we know the 5 senses, right? So, but the 6th one is the mind. So the 6 senses are, he says, is the main factor for the individual soul's involvement in this world. And so then what happens? It goes through the never-ending experiences. Here you have to understand. He's saying never-ending experiences. So it's an experience, it's not real. And going through births and deaths. And it is the infinitely powerful Maya, the will of the Lord, that has pushed the individual soul into the path of samsara. But even if it is, very difficult and hard to travel, he says, in spite of that, they persist in their travel through the forest like greedy merchants in the quest of wealth. So they don't mind, but they keep traveling. And they continue to perform selfish actions, however difficult that may be, and prolong their involvement in samsara indefinitely, in place of cutting it short by following the footsteps of holy ones who are absorbed in the bliss of the Lord's feet. So what happens? He says they continue to perform selfish actions. And how can you cut it short? Is also giving the shortcut to get out of this, which is by following the footsteps of holy ones. But they don't do that. But what happens? They just keep going in the circuitous route. And the 6 senses of man are the robbers that attack him in the forest. So the 6 senses are the 6 robbers that attack him. And the wealth of a man is really meant for the adoration of the Lord and for charitable and religious purposes that promote his higher evolution in the hereafter. But the mind and the 5 organs of knowledge, which are like the 6 brigands, rob away that wealth by attracting it to mean sensuous enjoyments that could be derived through sight, hearing, touch, taste, smell, imagination, etc., as robbers do with the wealth of merchants who are badly led and who are careless about their safety. So know that these 6 senses to be the brigands of the forest of samsara. So he says, what should a wealthy man do with his wealth? He should use it for charitable and religious purposes. And what happens if you use that? Then you will not be bound by this samsara and by that wealth. You would not feel proud saying that I am a wealthy man. Instead, you will think about the poor people. You'll think about the people who do not have wealth like you. And so when you partake that wealth with the people who are poor, then it is more enjoyment. But instead, what happens? The wealthy people spend it for sensuous enjoyments by all the 5 robbers, as they say. 5 robbers are sight, hearing, touch, taste, and smell. And what is the 6th one? 6th one is the mind. And how does the mind rob? Through imagination. The mind says, imagine that. Imagine driving a beautiful Lexus or a Rolls Royce. How beautiful it will be. And imagine flying in my own jet, private jet. How nice it would be. What is the difference? whether you're flying in a private jet or you're flying in a commercial jet. It's almost the same, except you might have a little more leg room or you can lie down, but then, in your private jet, you might not get sleepy. Because you might be thinking how much money I'm spending on just flying from this to other place. So, whereas in the commercial jet, you might get good sleep. And in the forest of samsara, there are members of one's family known as wife, children, etc. Though known by such names indicating closeness, they are the wolves of the forest, who, much against the will of the miserly householder, demand and deprive him of his strongly guarded wealth, as wolves carry away young kids from a flock of sheep. So you can say, in the forest of samsara, that's in the forest of the world, there are wolves. And what are their names? Wife, children, etc. Well, this is pretty harsh for a person. So we have to understand that. This is not really meant to, to just to think that your wife is a wolf or your children are wolves, so or some kind of ferocious animals. But he's saying, just showing this, that what happens, these people are the ones who carry away the wealth from you. Recently I heard, I was explaining the other day, but recently I heard that when a person who was about to die, there were about 4 children there. And he is about to die in his deathbed. And they are arguing about his wealth right in front of him. And he's dying. And they don't care about whether the father is dying or not. They are talking about how to distribute the father's wealth. So you can just imagine the pain that the father goes through. Having, worked for so long to get this much, and then at the end, what happens? He cannot take it. He cannot take the wealth. Nor, what happens is he cannot give it to somebody who will have peace of mind. Here the 4 children are fighting with one another. And then he's thinking about his wife. What is my wife going to get when the children are going to, whether they will give even a single penny to her? Will she be thrown out into the streets? So this is his last moments that he's worrying about. So that's why he's saying, it's like wolves. They're carrying away young kids from the flock of a sheep. And though a field is plowed every year, it is found covered with creepers and grass when new sowing operations start. For the seed of the old plants have been present in it. Even so, the household is the field of karma, and works never end there because of the presence of these seeds in the shape of desires and tendencies. It is as in the case of a box in which camphor is kept. Even if the substance is removed, the smell persists. Know this to be the vegetation covering the path of samsara. So he's saying, it's like sowing seeds in a field. So what you have to do, you have to take away all the other grass which is covering the soil. But even after you take it away, after some time it grows back. All the weeds will grow back. So he's saying the world is like this. And he also gives another example. Just think about a box in which camphor is kept. What happens if you open the box after some time when you remove the camphor? Still the smell will be there. So is the world like that. And the traveler on the road of samsara is attacked even without any purpose by evil men, as mosquitoes and flies do, and is deprived of his wealth by insects, birds, rats, and thieves. Prompted by ignorance, desire, and tendency for work, he moves about in this world of men, attributing substance and value to it, which in truth is as illusory as a castle in the air. So he's attributing so much of value to these things. And how much is the value? It's just like the castle that is built in the air. And sometimes infatuated with sense enjoyments, which to a discerning mind are ephemeral, like mirage. The jiva, that is the individual soul, gets engrossed with eating, drinking, and mating. And sometimes he comes across gold, the source of all evils. Prompted by rajas, which is of the same color as gold, he goes to take it. But the pursuit of the bright metal only brings him all around trouble, just as in the case of a man who is distressed by intense cold runs towards a flaming devil. Just see all the examples. It's very intense. It's just like a cold man who is suffering from intense cold. He sees fire, and then what happens? He's running to the fire so that he can get heat. But what happens? He realizes that's a devil who has coming in the form of a flame. So this is what happens to a man in samsara. And he says, this is, his mind gets engrossed with eating, drinking, and mating. And then what happens? Sometimes he comes across gold. And do you think gold is good? Of course, if you use it the way you should use, then it is good. But what happens if you get so much attached to it? Or what happens if you value it so much in your life? I remember telling you a story earlier. Once there was a great saint, and he was a avaduta. And one day, two men were walking in the forest. Suddenly, they saw him coming, running. And he said, "Don't go there, don't go there." So they said, "What happened?" "Oh, there is a thing that kills people there. It kills all people, so don't go there." And then he ran away. So when the two people heard this, they were friends. They were walking and they were going to the nearby village. And when they heard it, they got so curious. What is that thing that kills people? So they wanted to go and see. So when they went there, they saw a heap of dirt, which this avaduta had covered. So they started digging, and finally they found a pot of gold. And these two people were, long-time friends. And so they said to each other, we should take this with us now. And we can divide it equally. And you take half, I will take half. And we will become so rich. Tomorrow we'll be the richest people in our village. So they took the pot of gold. And the first argument was about who will carry that. And finally, before reaching the village, what happened was they had to stay in a satram, they call it tavern or an inn. And while they were staying in their rooms, suddenly one of the friends thought, why should he have all the gold? I want to have the gold. So he said, let me do one thing. The only thing I can do is to kill him, give him some poison. So he went out, bought some poison, and put it in the dinner, and served the dinner to his friend. Meanwhile, what happened was, his friend was, when he went out, was thinking, same thing, why should I share with him? Why should I share this whole pot of gold? So when he comes back, let me just finish him. So as soon as this person came with the dinner and set the dinner, the other man took a sword and just chopped his head. And then he went and happily ate the dinner So you know what happened. So that's what happens with the pot of gold. And that's what he said. So he says, sometimes you come across this gold, which is source of all evils. You think that gold is nice. So he says it is prompted by rajas. Rajas means action. And whenever you see gold, it prompts action. Some action. Most of the time it is the worst actions that it prompts. But sometimes it creates good actions also. You can just see, like some of the, I would say in India. India is the country where they have one of the highest gold deposits, or they keep the gold as in one form of investment. So all the women wear gold. All the men also wear. Many of the men wear gold also. It's not only women, but men also wear gold. You must have heard this because recently here in California, when the old Indian ladies went out for walking, they were attacked. And what did the attackers do? They just pulled their bangles or the rings that they were wearing, because the Indian women wear a lot of gold around their neck and on their hands, and then they show off, and this is what happens. There were so many incidents in the Bay Area where women, older women, were attacked. And now they complain. We were attacked. We are in this country and we were attacked by all these people. What kind of a country is this? They don't blame themselves. Why did they wear so much gold when they went outside? Nobody should have worn so much gold. And so when they see it, it prompts that kind of a negative reaction in people. That when they see the gold, oh, I want it. So that is what is rajas. So that is they say same color as gold. So what happens is here, he's saying that this samsari, or the man who is in the world, is just like this, the case of this man who has been sitting on ice, and then suddenly he sees the fire and running towards the fire, but he sees this flaming devil. And he says sometimes the jiva is in a dire want of a dwelling place, food and drink, wealth, and other objects of enjoyment, and wanders about everywhere in quest of them in the forest of samsara. So he keeps on wandering for all these things. And sometimes he gets entangled with women who are like a dusty whirlwind that completely blinds his eyes of discrimination. It's the opposite also. Don't think we are blaming women. For women it's men, the opposite sex. Or nowadays I should say same sex also, it doesn't matter. With all power of discrimination erased, he allows himself to be petted and fondled in the lap of women, and as a consequence, all his lowest animal propensities, based in tamas, are let loose. Ridden with lust and totally blinded by desire, he even forgets the presence of devas that stand always as witnesses to the actions of men. So here he's saying, what happens when lust blinds you? And the eye of discrimination is gone. And what happens in this? So he just goes into the lowest animal tendencies of tamas. And then he says he forgets the presence of devas that stand as witness to the actions of men. So what do you mean by devas here? Whenever you do an action, suppose there is nobody around, but there are 5 witnesses. Always 5 of them. Who are they? No. You're witness, I'm saying. Think about it. What are the 5 witnesses? Huh? What are not the senses, but what are the senses going to? Nature. So nature has 5 elements. The 5 elements, that is what is called as devas. The power, the subtle power behind this. So fire, earth, water, space, and ether. They are always watching you, no matter. So you remember the story when Amma said this about the disciple, the guru giving 2 disciples a chicken and asking them to go and kill it where nobody sees it. The first one comes back. And the guru asked him, what happened? So he says, I went into a cave. It was so dark. And then I finished it and came back. But the second one, he came back after a long time and he said, no, the chicken was alive. So the guru asked him, what happened? I could not kill it. Why? Because I was witnessing it. Who's this I here? So it's all these 5 devas. So any action that we do, if you think that, it's like they say the cat drinking milk. When the cat drinks milk, or when it's actually drinking the stolen milk, in India that's what happens. Here you wouldn't see that. So I have to explain and give a little more explanation. In here, the cat always gets all kinds of food, so there's no worry. But in India, the cats are walking around all the time, and whenever there is milk in the kitchen, the cat knows that there is milk in the kitchen. So what they would do, they would come through the windows and they will slowly sneak in and come to the pot, there is milk, and slowly remove the lid, and then what happens? It starts drinking. But when it starts drinking, what does it do is it closes its eye because it makes sure that nobody is watching. That's why it closes its eye, to make sure nobody is watching. So it's like that. We are doing all our actions like that. That's thinking that there is no witnesses. So these devas, the 5 witnesses are there all the time. Whatever you do, it will follow. That's why Amma says each and every karma, every thought is always imprinted in your subtle body. It won't let you loose. Wherever you go, it will follow you. And there is nothing like doing something without seeing. Of course, when you have a great guru like Amma also, that is even more dangerous because you know that Amma knows, sees, and is watching you all the time. Right? And in one sense, she is the big brother, right? But she's a compassionate sister, compassionate brother, compassionate mother who's watching you. It's just like the leopard that is watching its cub. And when the cub goes and falls or the cub is being attacked, then it will go there and protect the cub. So it's like Amma is watching us like that all the time. And not even a single thought escapes from her mind, from her, we can say from the consciousness of Amma. So she's not only watching us physically, but also subtly. So, but that, in one sense, that if we try to understand this, in our actions, we can change our actions. We can change our thoughts. And if we have a negative thought, immediately we'll start thinking, oh, Amma is aware of this. So I should not think like this. I should change my thought. So that's how we should use, instead of becoming guilty and saying that, oh, why is Amma watching all my thoughts or all my actions? The mind can also take you into a whirlpool like that, saying that Amma is watching everything. Oh, how can she do that? All these questions. So that's not correct. She should not watch me all the time. And I should have the freedom to do whatever I want to do. Of course, Amma has given us the freedom to do that. So, but here, that witness aspect of Amma is also there. So we have to understand that she's the witness that is watching us forever. And sometimes he may realize the vanity of sensuous life and its enjoyments at being deprived of the memory of his spiritual nature by the overpowering bodily consciousness. He runs after those very same mirage, like sensuous fulfillments as before. So, he wants to escape, but his body consciousness is so overpowering that he cannot escape. The direct and indirect threats of kings and enemies are what have been described as the harsh hoots of owls and shrill screeches of crickets, causing as much unpleasantness to the heart as to the ear. So, we can see the threat of enemies and kings. Here we can say the government. King means the government. Many of us, we might get a letter from IRS, that's enough for us to just, our mind to go, berserk. And so he's saying this, that or the enemies. And when the results of a jiva's good works are exhausted, and he is without any means of livelihood, he becomes dependent on other worldly men who are wealthy, but nonetheless deserve only to be called the living dead, for the wealth of these pitiable men, owing to misuse, is a menace to themselves in this world and fails to secure any good for them in hereafter. These are described as poisonous trees, creepers, and wells, which serve no useful purpose to anyone. Sometimes, through unholy associations, he is lured into atheistic sects, which are like waterless rivers. Just as a person falling into them only hurts himself, these atheistic religions only bring suffering to the jiva in this world and in the next. And when a man is not able to gain his livelihood, even by oppressing others, he turns towards his father and mother and even to distant relatives to dispossess them by asserting his right to their belongings. So he's saying this, what happens if we do not have a person to show our path, then what happens? We start associating with the wrong things in this world, like atheistic religions or this kind of group of people who might be teaching us or telling us to follow something which is totally stupid. And then also he says, when the jiva is not able to gain his livelihood, then he turns towards his family, his mother or father, and even to distant relatives to grab their possessions. And sometimes due to want of food and other necessaries, he undergoes intense and increased sufferings in his home, like one caught in a forest fire and thrown into the utter despair of depression. So anyway, we will stop here because there is some more explanation later. So we will look at it in the next one, but these examples, remember these examples are for us to have that, get that kind of a detachment And if we want to get that kind of a detachment, what the gurus do is to give us such severe examples so that our mind, which is so bound with all these objects in this world, suddenly starts thinking, at least thinking. We are not going to let it go. So that's why they have to give these powerful blows to the mind and start thinking about what is this. And as the thinking goes on, then as you keep hearing satsang, that's why you have to hear satsang so many times. Slowly and slowly, it starts detaching. And when the detachment comes, ultimately, the dispassion comes. And then we realize, oh, this is what we want in our lives. So until that moment, we have to keep hearing these harsh words. Understand that this harshness is only the surface, but their mind is as compassionate, as a soft sponge, as you would have seen. Like Amma, sometimes Amma scolds people, but the next moment she starts laughing, smiling at them. And she's just like a small child. She has nothing. She's not scolding or she's not giving all these harsh instructions because she's selfish. She's totally selfless. That's why her words don't hurt others. And she's not telling us because of her ego. It is because of our ego and the mistakes that we have done. So we have to always understand, when these holy saints give us all these instructions, it's for us to progress. And by hearing this slowly and slowly, we will try to understand what is the nature of this world and slowly disassociate ourselves with these attachments. So we will look at the rest in the next session. Om Amriteshwariyai Namah. अमृतेश्वरि सुस्मित चंद्रमुखी अरुणावसुगात्री जगज्जननी कमलोपमनेत्री कृपालहरि चरणाभयदात्री सुचारुमती
अमृतेश्वरि सुस्मित चंद्रमुखी अरुणावसुगात्री जगज्जननी कमलोपमनेत्री कृपालहरि चरणाभयदात्री सुचारुमती
अमृतेश्वरि सुस्मित चंद्रमुखी अरुणावसुगात्री जगज्जननी कमलोपमनेत्री कृपालहरि चरणाभयदात्री सुचारुमती
अमृतेश्वरि सुस्मित चंद्रमुखी अरुणावसुगात्री जगज्जननी कमलोपमनेत्री कृपालहरि चरणाभयदात्री सुचारुमती
करुणामृतवारिधि कल्पलदे कविदामृतवर्षिणि काव्यकले वरदाभयदायिनि वन्द्यपदे चरणागतपालिनि पावहरे
करुणामृतवारिधि कल्पलदे कविदामृतवर्षिणि काव्यकले वरदाभयदायिनि वन्द्यपदे चरणागतपालिनि पावहरे
अमृतेश्वरि सुस्मित चंद्रमुखी
अरुणावसुगात्री जगज्जननी कमलोपमनेत्री कृपालहरि चरणाभयदात्री सुचारुमती
स्वररूपि सरस्वती नादमयी शिवकामिनी शङ्करि राघवदि सुखदात्री सुरेश्वरि सर्वमयी शुभमूर्तिर्शिवङ्करि हैमवती
स्वररूपि सरस्वती नादमयी शिवकामिनी शङ्करि राघवदि सुखदात्री सुरेश्वरि सर्वमयी शुभमूर्ति शिवङ्करि हैमवती
अमृतेश्वरि सुस्मित चंद्रमुखी
अरुणावसुगात्री जगज्जननी कमलोपमनेत्री कृपालहरि चरणाभयदात्री सुचारुमती
शिवरूपिणि शाम्भवि शैलसुदे श्रुतिरूपि सुरार्चितपादयुगे शमदायिनि सर्वरि विश्वनुदे भवभञ्जिनि भैरवि भावकने
शिवरूपिणि शाम्भवि शैलसुदे श्रुतिरूपि सुरार्चितपादयुगे शमदायिनि सर्वरि विश्वनुदे भवभञ्जिनि भैरवि भावकने
अमृतेश्वरि सुस्मित चंद्रमुखी अरुणावसुगात्री
जगज्जननी कमलोपमनेत्री कृपालहरि चरणाभयदात्री सुचारुमती
अमृतेश्वरि सुस्मित चंद्रमुखी अरुणावसुगात्री जगज्जननी कमलोपमनेत्री कृपालहरि चरणाभयदात्री सुचारुमती
अमृतेश्वरि सुस्मित चंद्रमुखी अरुणावसुगात्री जगज्जननी कमलोपमनेत्री कृपालहरि चरणाभयदात्री सुचारुमती
चरणाभयदात्री सुचारुमती
चरणाभयदात्री सुचारुमती
चरणाभयदात्री Gajamukha Gajamukha Gananadha Gajamukha Gananadha Gauri Nandana Gananadha Gauri Nandana Gananadha Gajamukha Gajamukha Gananadha Gauri Nandana Gananadha Pasangusadhara Gananadha Pasangusadhara Gananadha Gananadha he Gananadha Gananadha he Gananadha Pasangusadhara Gananadha Gananadha he Gananadha Pasupati Nandana Gananadha Pasupati Nandana Gananadha Gauri Nandana Gananadha Gauri Nandana Gananadha Gajamukha Gajamukha Gananadha Gajamukha Gajamukha Gananadha Gauri गणनाथा गणनाथा हे गणनाथा गणनाथा हे गणनाथा 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 हे गणनाथा पशुपति नंदन गणनाथा गौरी नंदन गणनाथा कृपा करो मेरे कृपा करो मेरे प्रेम का दीप जला दो, तेरे स्मरणाम मग्न करा दो, करा दो मेरे प्रभु हे दया निधान, मेरे भगवान जय श्री
मेरे
जाता है। नाता है गे न सुर सजता है, राम ही राम कहना आता है। न सुर सजता है, राम ही पन्नगभूषण परमदयालो पार्वती जाने मां पाहि पन्नगभूषण परमदयालो पार्वती जाने मां पाहि సుందర రూప ఇందు జడాధర సాంబ శివ హర ఇందు జడాధర సాంబ శివ హర ఇందు జడాధర సాంబ శివ సాంబ శివ సాంబ శివ సాంబ శివ హర సాంబ శివ సాంబ శివ హర సాంబ శివ సాంబ శివ హర సాంబ శివ సాంబ శివ సాంబ శివ హర సాంబ శివ సాంబ శివ హర సాంబ శివ సాంబ శివ హర సాంబ శివ శివ హర సాంబ శివ సాంబ 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 శివ హర సాంబ శివ अमृतेश्वरी मङ्गलम् प्रणमदा मुक्तिप्रदे मङ्गलम् भुवनेश्वरी मङ्गलम् सुकृतिना एकाश्रये मङ्गलम् अमृतेश्वरी मङ्गलम् प्रणमदा मुक्तिप्रदे मङ्गलम् भुवनेश्वरी मङ्गलम् सुकृतिना विकासये मङ्गलम् हृदयेश्वरी मङ्गलम् हृदिलसत्तेजोर्मयी मङ्गलम् मृदुभाषिणी मङ्गलम् विजयदा प्रेमादृदे मङ्गलम् विजयदा प्रेमादृदे मङ्गलम् विजयदा प्रेमादृदे मङ्गलम् अमृतानंदमयी माता अमृतानंदमयी। जय बोलो सद्गुरु माता अमृतानंदमयी देवी की असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु। लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु। लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।